as far as who I am, I'm the VP of product for Huddly, ex-Microsoft. I used to be part of Link, depending on your mileage, you might remember Link, Skype for Business, then Teams, then Skype, and then Azure Edge AI. I left and I joined Huddly about a year ago, and I'm responsible for product, growth, and solutions. So if you're going to ask me prices, I warn you up front, I won't know them. But there are people who do that on the floor up there. I can give you like a ballpark, but I don't know the exact prices. I'm a remote employee, so I'm still in Seattle. The company is headquartered in Oslo. So day in and day out, I have to try to keep up with what's happening in the office. And these are some of the meeting rooms that are being set up, pretty much, I like to believe, for my benefit, into the Oslo headquarters. Very nice office, including some of the signature room that we have right here. And most of the times I'm having difficulty following the conversation, like understanding what is the focal point of the meeting. And that's where Crew comes in. But Crew is just one building block for our portfolio. The company started with the advent of AI intelligence. Specifically, there was an Intel chip that allowed you to do AI on the camera itself. So we are great believers in smart cameras and in edge AI. So that first product is the IQ, which is the USB camera right here. The same camera was repurposed as a content camera, as a whiteboard camera, which you can see at our booth. Next generation, what we realized was that USB is a limiting factor, as Adam was saying. So then we moved to IP. So our next generation cameras are IP. However, in order to preserve compatibility with MTRs and with existing Microsoft Zoom, not Google solution, because the Google Meet is actually IP direct to the room system. We have a network adapter and a USB adapter, respectively, which allow you to plug these cameras into the NTR, just like you would with any other camera. Once you have, these are the two Lego blocks, right? Like the difference between them, it's the same optical subsystem. These are 4K cameras, and that's a 6K camera with a narrower field of vision. Once you have these Lego pieces, you can create any configuration you want. So what we announced last year and we released at ISC in Barcelona, I guess, is the 3L1 Crew, this multi-camera experience. And then just at InfoComm, we announced an add-on. And what that means is that you can extend from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. But let me go a little bit back. And what I want to highlight to you that doing video right is very hard. So if you're looking at what comes out of the sensor, for example, all the way to the final image, there's a number of steps that include AI as well as traditional kind of geometry, mathematics, processing steps. The latest thing that we've added for InfoComm as well is perspective correction, because all too often the cameras are placed in such a way that you don't have a direct line of sight to the people in the room. So you can see before the correction what a weird angle is, but then we can essentially slide the camera as if on a sphere, so that it gives you a more natural aspect ratio and the face is not deformed. So that's just an example of how we use AI to make video better. Because we have AI on the edge, and because every single one of these cameras is a smart camera, we can do certain things about dicing and reassembling the reality in the room in such a way that is conducive to the remote participant. Ultimately, if you look at what it is that we do, why do we put all this effort into creating these systems and deploying these systems in the room, is usually for the benefit of the remote participants. There was a lot of research that I had done when I was part of Microsoft Research, trying to understand how do we quantify the benefits that we bring to these enterprises, and it mostly revolves around increased reported productivity, efficiency, inclusiveness. You want to feel as if you are in the room, or even in some cases, better than being there, in a sense that AI will understand the group dynamics and will kind of direct your attention towards what's important in the room. And mind you, it's not always the speaker, like sometimes it's the person that has an interesting reaction that leads you to believe that maybe you should pay attention right now. Okay, so how we work with AI is that we can run these machine learning algorithms on the chip, on the camera itself, And then we look for certain characteristics of the participant in the meeting. We understand posture, we understand gaze, we understand head orientation. All of these are strong indicators of engagement and attention. So we do that person by person. Obviously, I told you how we can crop the image and then only keep the pixels that are relevant. And the way we do that is that we take the boundary boxes and we stitch them together, as I'll show you on the next slide. But another feature that was asked of us is that a lot of rooms have glass walls like that. And you can define what we call a framing zone or an active zone. And as people are walking outside, they are detected as non-meeting participants. They're still detected as people, but we know to exclude them until they actually stepped into the room and they are integrated in the experience and into the focus. So this is how, once they are in the room, then we understand where is everybody located, and then we understand where the people are and how we should combine those people so that this is an L1, so they're always framed together. Or in case there are fewer people in the room, we want to show them all individually. So this, if you're familiar with Microsoft IntelliFrame, for example, it's a similar principle, is what IntelliFrame Cloud does, as the name suggests, in the cloud. But also we can send this directly to the MTR, which then presents it as the source of video to the remote participants. So this is how we arrive at the multi-camera experience, which is Crew. And mind you, the difference between some of the other multi-device solutions is that this is a peer-to-peer network. That's the best way that I can describe it for a technical audience. That all of these cameras discover each other. They live on a private IP network. They connect into a PoE switch. And then they discover each other. And they say, oh, there are 3 cameras. Actually, one of my favorite demos to do is to keep adding cameras to the Crew kit as the meeting is ongoing. You don't have to hang up the call. All you do is you plug another camera using Ethernet. We agreed that that's what's best for large rooms and for large spaces. And that camera advertises itself on the network and participates in this mesh, participates in this network. And then shots that are being framed by these additional cameras are being offered up to the MTR for selection. So the best way I can describe it is that it's like a democracy, right? Like every camera frames a few shots about what it thinks it's relevant to the meeting. And then puts these shots up for voting. And then there's a voting algorithm that runs independent on all cameras, and one shot gets selected and sent out. What's important here is that, remember how we spoke about the remote participant is what matters in a meeting ultimately, right? That's why we do audio video. We want that participant that might be sitting on a couch or at a desk that's been sitting in meetings all day to feel pulled in, to feel drawn in. And the techniques that we use to produce the experience are techniques that were taught by us by TV producers that create like talk shows, right? Like you can watch, I don't know, ESPN, I guess, for folks that are in the States, for hours and hours. And if you start looking at it with a TV producer's mindset, you see the techniques that they use to kind of draw you in continuously. And we try to replicate some of that. Let me just skip over this slide. I want to get to this slide. So I told you how we initially launched the 3-camera setup. Now, if you have a larger room, then you can go to this 5-camera setup. Eventually, what we have actually running in our office in Oslo is we have a 7-camera setup that's used in a all-hands space. It's a kind of shared space. And while it's ideal that all the cameras are pointing in the same direction, it need not be that way. So with the add-on that we released at InfoComm, you can keep adding cameras and eventually even put one back here, pointing back towards the inside of the room. And this is what it looks like in an actual space. You see the 3 cameras that we have right here. And then if we had more stands and more room, we could place 2 there or 2 in the back corners, looking back into the room. Now, in terms of how the production of the meeting itself, there are 2 modes that we support at the moment, right? One of these modes is what we call collaboration mode. And collaboration mode is, imagine you have kind of like a brainstorm, where as a remote participant, you want to understand how the conversation moves around the meeting from person to person. And also how people react, because as I was saying, 68% of all the information that's being transacted in the meeting is nonverbal in nature. But it's very important for people to achieve comprehension about what are we trying to accomplish here. Everything is a negotiation. So these nonverbal cues are very important. So in collaboration mode, the cameras will be tracking not just the speaker, but also the reactions from the other participants in the room. In speaker mode, it's more of a traditional, like moving from one speaker to another, though it's not like a sudden transition. There is a cinematic experience. So if you have two speakers, then as you switch from one to another, we'll actually go to a wide frame, wide shot first, and then zoom into the next speaker. So you have this smooth transition. And because our cameras are software defined, what it means for us is that we can continuously add features without having to replace the existing devices that you already have in the room. We just upgrade them remotely. For example, ACP, the adaptive perspective correction, which I've showed you, or some of the more advanced group or gallery view framing are being updated remotely.